Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. Here are the main stories we have for you this week. French journalists released after 10 months in Syria describe the men who held them captive. Hopes for unity in the Palestinian territories as Hamas and Fatah talk about reconciliation. And Tel Aviv gets ready for the annual French invasion, with Coast Guards taking language lessons to make sure they can keep tourists safe. Well, 4 French journalists who left Syria at the weekend after being held hostage for 10 months have spoken out about the conditions of their detainment, revealing that some of their kidnappers may themselves have been French. Rochelle Harrison-Pless tells us more about their months in captivity and why they may have been released now.
10 months in captivity. 10 months locked away in an underground cell with little daylight and very little food. But the 4 French journalists held hostage in Syria are now back on home turf and opening up about their ordeal.
The conditions we experienced in captivity were hard. They were war zone conditions of detention. Sometimes we were very close to the front line with fighting all around. Something that all Syrians are going through now. On top of that, we were chained to each other in a basement.
Garnering the most attention are revelations that some of their captors were French speakers. But the veteran war reporter is staying silent on the subject in order to prevent further harm to those hostages still in Syria.
I don't want to go into more details about the detention or the people. It's not up to me to do that right now. I've just got home. First, I'd like to know where this is going before making any declarations that could have consequences.
But the presence of French-speaking abductors was confirmed by the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and experts on Syria.
We need to distinguish between the kidnappers who actually belong to jihadist groups and the prison guards, the people who deal with the day-to-day management of hostages. There are, indeed, a certain number of French and Belgians.
France strongly denies it paid a ransom or sent weapons to the hostage takers in exchange for the release of the 4 men. The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or the ISIL, has been accused of kidnapping the Frenchmen. The jihadist group is responsible for the majority of abductions in Syria. So why free them now? In March, the liberation of 3 Spanish journalists raised hopes that their French counterparts would also see an end to their ordeal. The situation on the ground could provide further clues. Active in Iraq and Syria, the ISIL is fighting the regime of Bashar al-Assad, but some of its factions are also at war with other Islamist rebel groups such as the Al-Nusra Front.
Pourquoi y a-t-il eu libération ces derniers temps?
Why has the ISIL released several hostages recently? Well, it's taken several blows from other rebel groups, so it's had to back off. It can't control all the territories it previously held, and it certainly cannot transfer hostages, as was the case before.
The French one-time hostages said they were held along with other captives. It's believed the ISIL is currently holding some 30 foreign journalists.
First, France and now the US says it has information that chemical weapons were indeed used this month in an attack at Kafr Zaita, a town in the northwest of Syria. There is as yet still no proof, but the White House says an investigation is underway. The chemical suspected to have been used this time is chlorine, used at toxic industrial level strengths. It needs to be noted perhaps that chlorine was not on the list of chemical weapons Syria needs to have handed over by the end of June.
This is the amateur footage which supports international claims that chlorine gas has been used as part of a chemical attack in Syria. Experts believe these people breathing into gas masks show symptoms of toxic poisoning. Rebel sources say hundreds of people have been affected. The attacks believed to have taken place in the opposition-held town of Kafr Zaita to the north of Hama. The French government was swift to express alarm, flagging up evidence pointing to a poison gas attack.
There are indications which have yet to be verified that there have been chemical attacks recently. These were much less significant than those in Damascus a few months ago, but were still deadly attacks.
Some have accused Bashar al-Assad of being behind the attack. In the US, authorities are looking into who is responsible.
We are examining allegations that the government was responsible. We take all allegations of the use of chemicals in combat very seriously, and we are working to determine what happened.
The Syrian regime has denied any connection to such an attack, accusing instead the al-Nusra rebel group affiliated to al-Qaeda. According to the Syrian National Council, 6 chemical attacks have taken place during the month of April alone. This comes after last summer's sarin gas attack in a Damascus suburb. It killed hundreds of civilians and saw fingers pointed at Bashar al-Assad with threats of military repercussions. As a result, he signed a UN accord agreeing to the destruction of 1,300 tons of Syria's chemical arsenal. The operation is overseen by the OPCW, the International Chemical Weapons Watchdog. Inspectors here say 2/3 of that stock has been eliminated so far, but there are fears that they're unlikely to dispose of the rest before the June 30th deadline, a situation that for many Western governments is simply a bid to buy more time on the part of the Syrian regime.
Hope for Palestinians that a national consensus government and elections could be on the horizon. A senior exiled Hamas official has travelled from Egypt to enter reconciliation negotiations with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which is dominated by the FATAH movement of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
Hamas leaders embrace as Musa Abu Marzouk arrives in Gaza City. The faction's head of foreign affairs is meeting with Hamas Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh to prepare to welcome a delegation of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, dominated by the rival Fatah movement. Tensions between Hamas and Fatah boiled over into deadly clashes in 2007. Islamist militant movement Hamas took control of Gaza, effectively dividing the Palestinian territories in two, with the West Bank controlled by Fatah. On Monday, Hamas announced it was making a gesture of goodwill.
Today, the Interior Ministry is releasing 10 prisoners who are members of the Fatah movement in Gaza. This step is being taken in order to facilitate an atmosphere of reconciliation on the eve of the arrival of our brothers from the Fatah movement to the Gaza Strip.
The release of prisoners charged with breaches of public order is the first step ahead of talks which Palestinians hope will put an end to years of enmity.
There have been pressures on the two governments in the West Bank and in Gaza due to several problems within our own communities and with negotiations with Israel. So the only solution is to end the Palestinian divisions to relieve the citizens of Gaza and of the West Bank.
Both sides are keen to see a deal. Hamas's base in Egypt has been under pressure since last summer, when the Egyptian army removed the movement's ally, President Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood. And Fatah's peace talks with Israel have been stalled for more than 2 years.
Only 2 candidates have come forward to take part in Egypt's presidential polls set for the end of May. Former Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was the first to put his name in the ring, joined now on the list by the well-known leftist politician Hamdin Sabahi.
He was a latecomer to Egypt's presidential race and now the sole challenger to frontrunner Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
We will win with the blessing of God, the will of our people, the effort of our young people, the blessing of our martyrs and injured, and with our noble dream about an Egypt we deserve.
Left-wing former MP Hamdin Sabahi is a long-time opposition figure, jailed no less than 17 times during the reign of strongman Hosni Mubarak and that of his predecessor Anwar Sadat. He also came a surprise third in the country's last presidential poll in 2012. Widely expected to win is popular former army chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Amid massive street protests, in July 2013, Sisi helped oust Egypt's first freely elected leader Mohamed Morsi, barely a year after Morsi named him military commander-in-chief. But as he leads a hardline crackdown on Morsi supporters, there are fears a Sisi victory would mark a return to the autocratic rule of the Mubarak era. Dismissing these accusations, Sisi has promised to stabilize the country, with his allies confident he'll steer it back towards democracy.
This man is working in the best interest of Egypt, and we're strongly supporting him until he reaches power.
If Sisi sweeps to victory, he'll be the latest in a line of Egyptian rulers with a military past, dating back to the 1950s, a line only briefly broken during Morsi's year in office. But will the election of a new president be enough to help solve the crisis in Egypt, rocked by months of unrest since Morsi's overthrow?
Well, with a continuous coastline, an average of 300 days of sunshine a year, life really is a beach in Tel Aviv. Its shores attract over 250,000 French tourists every year. As a result of the French influx, lifeguards getting ready for holiday season are not only training to assure their physical fitness, but also taking language lessons.
Some call it the Middle East's answer to New York, others an Oriental Los Angeles. Just a 4.5-hour plane ride from Paris, Tel Aviv has become a top destination for French tourists.
It's a beautiful country with an incredible number of civilizations that have come together. And Tel Aviv has a great atmosphere. People are sitting outside. It's really nice.
Tel Aviv is a young city. It's a city that never sleeps. Young people are enjoying life.
The Israeli city is famous for its beaches and its beautiful weather, but has a lot more to offer. A traditional bazaar, modern art museums, as well as unique architecture. These buildings were built by German architects who fled Nazi Germany in the 1930s and are now part of UNESCO's World Heritage List. But Tel Aviv is also the city that never sleeps, and many younger tourists come to experience its bustling nightlife.
It's crazy here at night. There are so many people. It's packed.
More than 250,000 French tourists head to Israel every year, just behind Americans and Russians. And with summer just around the corner, authorities have decided to deal with the influx of French tourists by teaching Tel Aviv lifeguards some basic French.
In the past few years, we've had a lot of French people, tourists from France as well as French Jews, who move here to settle down. They don't really speak Hebrew and are more comfortable speaking French. So early in the year, we started preparing lifeguards for the high season by teaching them basic French to help them communicate with French speakers on their beaches.
Sunshine, good food, and a great atmosphere, all in a place that tries to make you feel at home. French tourists are bound to keep returning to the Israeli city and enjoy the party.
Well, it's on that sunny note that we're going to have to end this edition of Middle East Matters. Don't forget, you can catch it all again on our website, france24.com. Have a great week and see you again next time.